Welcome to CEO Interviews, a production of AGORACOM, in which we take the time to talk to small cap company executives about recent important news and developments with their company. Today I'm happy to have Don Bubar. He's President and CEO of Avalon Rare Metals. The company trades on the stock symbol AVL on both the New York Stock Exchange and on the Toronto Stock Exchange. Now, for those of you that are new to the story, as the name suggests, the company is a mineral development company with a primary focus on rare metals and minerals. What you may not know is the company's Nechalacho project ranks as the most advanced, large, heavy rare earth project in the world outside of China. As a result of the critical importance to the high-tech, clean tech, and defensive industries, as well as their growing demand from all of the above, developing rare metal sources outside of China is extremely important, so much so that was a topic of a recent story on 60 Minutes. Avalon also owns 5 other rare metals and minerals projects in North America, making the company a very large and important player in the industry. Don, welcome to the show.
Hi, George. Great to be back and part of the AGORACOM community again.
Don, we're happy to have you. Given your long history of success, we're looking forward to another great run for the company in the coming years. And on that note, the company just put out second quarter MD&A, and what struck me about that, because that's when we talk about it, you had some great details in there, is that Avalon is not a one-project company. You've got several strong projects. I want to cover a couple of those. Let's talk about Separation Rapids first. That's your lithium minerals property located just outside Kenora, Ontario. That's been in your portfolio for years. Tell us about that project.
George, we've had Separation Rapids for almost all of the 20 years that I've been running this company now. It goes back to 1997. When the deposit was first discovered and defined as a large, new, significant resource of the rare lithium mineral petalite. Petalite has always been used as an ingredient to make glass ceramics, thermal shock resistant glass ceramics, most famously used by Corning to make their Corningware cookware, now used in glass ceramic stovetops and fireplace shields. And it's only been sourced in one place in the world, and like the rare earth story, nobody likes to rely on a single source of supply of a key raw material. But there was enough supply for a long time until just recently we were informed by a number of users of this material that they would like to see a new supply come into the market. So that has motivated us to reactivate the project, and we are now doing some work on it to produce test samples for these consumers of petalite for the glass ceramics manufacturing business, and also looking at other opportunities in the lithium space that are being created now by its new use in rechargeable battery technology.
It's amazing that you personally and the company has had this knack of picking up great projects years in advance before everybody else, and then being able to actually hold on to them and then get them to potentially commercial stages. Like here, for example, we can talk a little bit more about. Let's talk about some of the potential customers you're talking to. Are you able to talk about any kind of names or more specific applications if you're not able to mention names?
No, but I mean, I mentioned Corning, and they're no longer in the glass ceramics business. Actually, they sold that business in around 2000, and that was the main reason that we were not able to bring the project along at that point in time and try to get it in production. At that time, it looked like we could be the supplier of petalite to Corning's manufacturing facility in the United States. But then they sold the business, and the new owners decided to shut it down and move the production to China, and that kind of ended that market opportunity. So we've been basically waiting patiently ever since for a new opportunity to emerge, and that's one of the things I've learned about these specialty metals and rare minerals is you do have to be patient. You can't force them into the market. You have to wait for the market demand to come around and want this new supply. And recognizing that, we have been patient, and sure enough, I didn't think it would take 18 years, but there we are. It has finally come around again, and we're seeing that opportunity finally to take this project forward.
So what have you been doing there over the last few months in preparation or anticipation of these potential new market opportunities?
We had to produce some test samples for the customers that have expressed interest. so they could try it out and evaluate them to see if they meet their criteria. Often they have very demanding specifications on purity. And we were able to produce an exceptionally pure product that cleared the first hurdle. So now we're being asked to go forward and develop a plan to produce a larger volume test sample. The final hurdle is to produce a large volume sample that they can put through their production facility and evaluate its performance. And once that test is met, then they'll give you a commitment on offtake to allow you to access capital to build the operation. So we're now moving into that next stage and looking for opportunities.
So the kind of sample, what are the typical size of samples you're sending now, and then what are you aiming to do? What's next for Separation Rapids as far as larger bulk samples?
So we're sort of doing a few kilo size samples now, and then to scale it up you go to hundreds of kilos and tons. So it's a much different scale of sample. So we're doing that, but we're also seeing, as I mentioned earlier, the opportunity to perhaps produce a lithium chemical product as well as this industrial mineral for the glass ceramics industry. What we have observed over the last few years is, of course, the energy storage business is growing very rapidly. Rechargeable batteries, lithium-ion batteries, rechargeable battery of choice. And there's a trend towards ever higher purities of the raw materials used to make the cathodes and anodes of these rechargeable batteries. And we think that our petalite, because it's basically already been purified by Mother Nature when the deposit was formed, offers an opportunity to perhaps produce a very high purity lithium chemical at a lower cost than traditional sources by already being very pure to begin with. So we're starting some work on that front to see what the possibilities are, and we have done some initial tests just to try leaching the petalite and see what that product looked like and how easily it would be leached, and those results were very encouraging. So we're now preparing to move to the next step of evaluation of that opportunity. And it's exciting because it would give us kind of two separate markets, growing markets for our lithium products there that are very different in terms of supply-demand cycles, and make for a stronger business case to get this off the ground and ultimately a more profitable business operation.
It seems like the market's almost coming to you in that way, because this isn't the first time. It seems like over the last few months I've been hearing more and more demand from the end users for higher purity, whatever. I've heard the graphite guys talk about there's a demand for higher purity. Now you're talking about lithium, higher purity. Even the quartz, you're talking about ultra high purity. So is it fair to say that the advances in technology are almost playing into your hands when it comes to Separation Rapids?
Yes, that's exactly right. And so the purer the feedstock that you're trying to purify, theoretically, the easier it will be to get to those ultra-high purities, 4 nines, 5 nines purities that are increasingly demanded in the industry, as evidently they contribute to increased, enhanced performance characteristics of the end-use product.
So before we move on from Separation Rapids, do you have any indication for ETA here, when samples will be going out to customers, when you might be hearing the next round of feedback? Generally speaking, is it something that will go through the summer or through the end of 2015?
We'll be working away steadily at it over the next 6 months or so. We do need to get back into the field there and collect more of the ore to process to make more of the petalite product. And so we're now working on the steps involved in upgrading our access road, getting the necessary permits and licenses from the Ontario government to proceed with a bulk sampling program. So that would be the next step, and then we'll be looking at the alternatives on where to process it to produce these test samples.
Don, Separation Rapids isn't the only project with activity in the past quarter, according to the MD&A. You also advanced the East Kemptville Tin-Indium Project along. Before I get into some specific questions, give us a bit of a summary of the East Kemptville project and why investors should be paying attention to it.
Well, basically, the tin market looks really, really interesting right now. Most people are somewhat familiar with tin from its historic uses as tin plating for cans, but it has a very important use now in electronics, in that tin is used to make lead-free solders that are used in all electronic devices on the circuit boards to connect the various circuits on a circuit board as an alternative to lead because of lead toxicity. And so now the demand for tin is directly tied to the demand for consumer electronics products. So if you believe there's a future for smartphones and laptop computers, you got to believe there's a future for a growing demand for tin. Yet supplies have become more and more constrained. It's similar to the rare earth story. China dominates, and a couple of other countries in Southeast Asia, Indonesia primarily. And traditionally there's been low-cost sources of supply in Indonesia, and those are largely exhausted now, and there needs to be new supply come into the market to meet this growing demand. And at East Kemptville, we have a situation where there was a past producing mine there back in the 1980s that only shut down in the early 90s because of declining prices at that time. That was before this application in solders had been developed. And it's been sitting there ever since as a closed mine site waiting for an entrepreneur to come on and see an opportunity there. So that was me about 10 years ago, actually. And it's been a challenge because being a closed mine site held by a major international mining company that was inclined to just leave it alone and just manage the site in a risk-free way, to be able to build the case for investing in this and doing something with it. But we made some dramatic progress on that front in the last year when we finally got permission to go on the ground and do some drilling on the historic resource. And that allowed us to produce a 43101 compliant resource, basically just allowed us to report what we already knew about the historic resource that had been reported back in '92. And then use that in doing some initial modeling on the economics of redeveloping the site. So in the last quarter, we got that study done. It's a very preliminary, we called it a conceptual redevelopment study, basically just to demonstrate to everyone that it was worth investing more time in, that there was a business case for redeveloping the site, and it was worth everybody's effort, including the province, and letting us move forward with reevaluation of the opportunity at East Kemptville.
And again, I can't help but notice that how could you have known 10 years ago that tin would be more than just tin 10 years later? But here we are. It seems like, again, the market's coming to you because going beyond traditional uses, now you've got these uses in consumer electronics. To give everyone an indication, at home an indication, this initial model that you put out in your conceptual economic study, you're talking about, I'm reading it off here, 10,000 tons per day. So this isn't small stuff.
Yeah, this was an open pit mine, and that was the historical production rate. We didn't yet look at alternative sizing of the operation yet. That's something we'll do going forward. So just to keep it simple, we used the same sort of basic operating parameters as they did historically, applied more current assumptions on pricing for tin and the byproduct metals that we'll produce there, and just to see what the economics looked like. And they look pretty attractive, certainly attractive enough to justify further investigation into the opportunity.
You've also got, so tin a lot of us are familiar with, didn't know that it's going to move into the high-tech space, which is great, but you've also mentioned indium as being significant. Now, most people at home and watching this don't know the significance of indium. So what's the story with indium, and how much do you have there, or how much do you think you have?
Well, interestingly enough, it was the indium potential is what kind of attracted me to the area in the first place, because being already in rare metals back in 2004, 2005, I was aware of what was happening in terms of new demand for indium in electronics as well. And knew also that you did find indium often associated with tin and zinc in deposits like East Kemptville, and observed that no one had ever really systematically analyzed for indium there historically. So I was able to get my hands on some samples and did some analyses for indium, and indeed did prove that there was significant indium enrichment with the tin-zinc mineralization at East Kemptville, and kind of had an aha moment. Well, this deserves more investigation. And sure enough, the work we've done recently has provided further evidence of widespread indium enrichment within the whole resource there. It needs to be further quantified. But this is kind of a hidden upside to the numbers that we produced in the conceptual study. We weren't allowed to include it in the economics, or we can't yet because there's not enough analytical data to include it in the resource. But it's there, and as we do quantify it and are able to include it, we'll just simply add more revenues to the financial model that we've started to build there.
Well, we're going to look forward to hearing about that when that's complete. So it's not enough that you got Separation Rapids, it's not enough that you got East Kemptville, but on top of this, you have your prize at the end of the day, which is the Nechalacho Rare Earth Elements Project. What's going on there? First of all, let's talk about what's happening in the rare earth market these days.
Well, it's been pretty quiet in the rare earth world for the last year or two after that spectacular bubble we had in 2011 with Chinese export policy causing that spike in pricing that frankly got to unsustainable levels. So we've seen probably an overcorrection on rare earth prices since then, and some changes in the export policy in China, but really haven't changed the big picture there. China still controls the market, and there's still inadequate supply of particularly the heavy rares for consumers around the world outside China, and the need to build that supply chain outside China. But we have started to see a little bit of an uptick in rare earth prices. In February, it was quite interesting. There was kind of a resurgence in trading activity in Avalon and some of the rare earth equities in mid-month that many of the AGORACOM community may have noticed.
Oh, they did.
And we saw that immediately that was directly related to an uptick in heavy rare earth prices, in particular the rare earths that are used in magnets, terbium, dysprosium, and neodymium, all moved up significantly higher. That got some publicity and kind of reminded investors again about the fact that the supply issue for these critical heavy rare earths has not been solved, and there needs to be a new supply, and reminded investors about that, as was further reminded in the 60 Minutes piece you mentioned earlier that came along later. So that's encouraging to us. We knew it would happen at some point in time. It's just a matter of time before these price cycles turn around. And with heavy rare earths, there has not been that new supply come into the market as there has been for some of the light rare earths because of Molycor and Linus starting to get into production. And interestingly, in this recent price movement, you saw just the critical five rare earths move up, while the more abundant light rare earths like cerium did not respond similarly.
So as you're, and again, this probably goes back to my thesis earlier about the higher purity quartz. As technology advances, as application advances, as hardware and all these things advance, you just need the better and better stuff. Let's, in layman's terms, and the heavy rare earths are going to continue to be in high demand, whereas the lights probably won't be needed as much. So you're going to be working on financing partners and all those things for Nechalacho. But what have you been doing in the meantime? Some activities, and what have you continue doing some work there?
Yeah, we're continually looking at opportunities to make the extraction and refining process lower cost and more efficient. So our metallurgical team, led by Dave Marsh, are still doing work on that to see if we can find ways to do it more cheaply. These projects are expensive to build, And the market's telling us they'd like to see us find a way to do it for less, and so we're focusing now on trying to accomplish that. That's one initiative, and in parallel with that, we are trying to complete the permitting process there so that we'll be in a fully permitted position when the market recovers sufficiently to allow us to access capital to move into the construction phase. We'll basically be in a ready, set, go position to do that if we can get the permits in place this year. And under Mark Wiseman's leadership, we're working through that process and expect to get it done by the end of 2015.
So it's obvious from reading the MDA, watching you here, that you've got a great team around you. You've done some fantastic things on the project side, and recently you actually were recognized for that. And I always look for things like that. I call that third-party validation. You were recognized by Corporate Knights magazine. Tell us what that recognition was for.
Well, they have this Future 40 of corporate leaders in sustainability, and they do an annual ranking now, and have a ranking of basically small cap companies that have produced sustainability reports and reported on their sustainability performance over the last year. As you and your followers there at AGORACOM would know, we've been committed to sustainability for many years now and have been producing a sustainability report that meets GRI rules for 3 years now, and continue to be committed to it and the principles of social environmental responsibility. And it's great to get some recognition from a publication like Corporate Knights that follows that space and recognize the work that we're doing. We're just hopeful that the broader investment community will start to recognize the value that we think we have built into the company by being good actors in the area of sustainability and social environmental performance. It's not really being fully recognized amongst the investment community yet, but we think we will be, and we're happy to continue to be a leader in sustainability going forward.
Well, if I can add some color to that, so sustainability maybe 10 years ago was all about, companies want to be responsible, they want to be environmentally friendly and all those kind of things. They just thought it had some goodwill attached to it, and it did. But what I'm seeing in every industry, from the mines and metals industry to the food industry to every industry, is that your clients now, customers, the high-end customers, whether the big automakers, the big technology companies, food retailers, they're demanding these things now. You actually have to have these things in place, and I think that's why investors almost have to take a closer look at what you're achieving, especially with your sustainability program, because it doesn't matter if you've got the goods, if I can speak in layman's terms, if you don't have those kind of sustainability benchmarks, and you're just not welcome. It doesn't matter what you have, you're not going to be able to make that sale at the end of the day. So if I can add some color to everybody for what I'm seeing in industries across the board, and Don, I don't know if I'm right or not, but it seems like you now better have, and you better be a top performer when it comes to that. Otherwise, your products just aren't welcome.
Well, you're exactly right, George. And it's particularly true in the clean tech industry, and we recognized this quite a while ago, that companies in that space are very sensitive to their corporate image around sustainability. So they do audit their supply chains right back to the source of the raw materials to make sure they're produced in a sustainable way. And we saw that as an opportunity early on to position ourselves to advantage with our customers in the clean tech world.
Yeah, and this day of social media, where bad news spreads fast, companies don't want to be dealing with vendors down the chain that aren't doing the right things when it comes to either labor or the environment and sustainability and those kind of things. So that's where I see the huge value in what you're doing there.
Well, and also it's actually legislated that you have to do that in the United States with certain rare metals and minerals, notably tantalum. Also, tin is defined as a conflict mineral under that legislation called the Dodd-Frank Act as well. And that maybe creates another opportunity for us as an emerging potential tin producer to produce conflict-free tin.
Don, great team, great projects, great results. We thank you for joining us here today, and looking forward to, this is the one of many that we're going to be doing throughout this year. So I want to thank you for taking time out today to talk to everybody about the MD&A.
My pleasure, George. Talk to you again soon.
You've been watching Don Bubar. He's President and CEO of Avalon Rare Metals. The company trades under the stock symbol AVL on both the Toronto Stock Exchange and the New York Stock Exchange. Look at the symbol, look up the company's website, or get to AGORACOM to find more great information about the company. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Have a great day, and we'll see you next time.